This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be happy. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be happy. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Okay. So I don't really have a plan tonight. I usually do have a plan, but not this time. It was a bit odd. But one of the things that probably be interesting to talk about is a deeper part of the practice, but also one which is very accessible to everyone, and I think very relevant today as well, is that deep down, we all have the capacity to experience and to develop and to live a life filled with happiness and joy and loving kindness and compassion and all these wonderful, beautiful qualities. And yet for the vast majority of us, they feel inaccessible, disconnected, lost, alienistic even. We don't know how to find them. And sometimes we might feel that we can't even access them, or we just don't have the ability at all. Some feel that we may never experience those things. But what's interesting about this is that is in itself a bit of an illusion. Because when we look at emotions in particular, we say greed and hatred, love and hatred are two sides of one coin. And that is interesting, is that if love and hate are two sides of one coin, then to experience one, you have to be able to experience the other. They're on a spectrum, basically. They are connected. And so the thing is, as long as we have either of those abilities, we have the ability to choose. But a large part of the Buddhist practice as such, in daily life as well as in meditation, is to reconnect and to rediscover, in a way, those beautiful qualities, the happiness, the joy, all these wonderful things. Because we never lose them. No matter what has happened to us, no matter what we do, no matter what we're exposed to, they're still there. The problem is, they can be buried very, very deep. They can be buried with all kinds of things. Trauma, they can be buried with bad conscience, bad feelings, regrets, anxieties. They can be overcovered with so many things that we feel that they might not even be available to us anymore, as if somehow we've lost the ability for the rest of our lives, as if we've been poisoned or destroyed. But the truth is, that's not actually the case. Those things will always be available to us. It's just that we have to be able to find them And the thing is that in your meditation or your daily life, if you choose to practice them, you'll find that they are still there. And being still there, it's more accessible. We're more familiar with them and we can find them more easily. We can bring them into daily life more easily. And this is something which I think is very, very difficult for people. It's something that we find a lot in monastic life in particular. We can be so caught up in the practice or in our daily life or anything else. You know, we're basically just coping. We're just running along trying to manage life in all its chaos and all its ups and downs and everything else, that we sometimes even feel that even if we can find them, we don't have the energy for them. You know, we're just not really available to experience them. But the reality is, the more and more you find them, the more and more that you're familiar with them, the less effort and energy it is to connect with them. For a lot of people, it's this big trial, this, oh, I must be a good Buddhist, I must wish all sentient beings happiness and all that kind of stuff. And it's theatre. It's just a ritualistic thing that we do, hoping one day that it'll all kind of connect. But it never does. Sometimes, for some of us, we might, luckily, fluke it. And that's okay. Those flukes are quite useful. You know, they're very interesting experiences because they remind us, hang on a minute, how did that happen? But at the same time, it's still a fluke. And that can be very, very difficult for people because they're trying to, you know, you might have a beautiful meditation, perhaps on a retreat, perhaps at home, and everything's wonderful and there's so much contentment and joy and everything all of a sudden seems okay in the world. The pain has disappeared. And we want it so badly, we try to get back to it. And as we try to get back to it, we lose it because our intention is problematic. We're trying to get to something as if it's something we have to accomplish, something we have to achieve, something we have to own. And yet it isn't that at all. And this is, I think, the amazing thing about the entire practice as such, is that the moment that you start to have room for these beautiful qualities, to include them in your life, so to speak, it becomes effortless. But it also complicates things slightly, because all of a sudden, these beautiful states give us a bit of a culture shift. They basically expose all the things that we take for granted in our coping mechanisms, our vested interests, all that stuff that we just have in our daily life. And all of a sudden, it makes them seem more crude, more ugly, more messy, more unsophisticated even. And we have to choose. And sometimes the choice isn't even available to us. It's in our face that, you know, this is the direction we have to go to. Is that our daily life as such is missing all these beautiful things. And all the things that we think will bring us happiness, which don't, all of a sudden are patently, obviously going to let us down. And we lose faith in them. We become disenchanted with them. And this is a very, very important part of the whole Buddhist practice altogether. This disenchantment with the scams, with the cons, with the you know, the advertising, all the little fibs that we swallow, all the things that we hope are going to make everything okay. And yet once we see those scams, it's very easy to let them go. Why would you want to buy into them? It's so obviously not going to work out. It's a lose-lose scenario. And so right view starts to develop. But what's interesting about this is a much, much deeper level. Psychologically or spiritually, we could say, it's impossible actually to harm someone else. It's very interesting. Physically, yes, you can harm someone very easily. But on a very, very deep level, you cannot harm someone else. Now, in Western thought, this is interesting because Socrates came up with this one, but it's very much in Buddhism as well. There's a section called the asavas, which is people debate about what it means, whether it's inflowing or outflowing. Basically, it depends exactly where you're looking at it, but it's the stuff where you're reaching out and bringing it back into your own mind. And so deep, deep down, we can harm ourselves very easily. by doing wrong to others, by harming others, by harming ourselves, by bringing in and buying into all these ideas and criticisms and things which sometimes are based on other people's projections and have absolutely no reality whatsoever, and we buy into them, and they completely disenfranchise us from our happiness, from our well-being, from our potential and capacity to be human and to live a good life. And this is where it gets interesting, because in right intention, right motivation, whichever you prefer to call it, right there is ahimsaka, doing no harm, non-violence. Avyapada, kindness, the compassion, and nekama, the letting go, the relinquishing. And we connect this with right effort, the right effort to do what is good and encourage those good states to arise, and to not do what is harmful and to discourage the harmful states from arising. And a mindfulness for us to tell the difference, basically. But it really comes back to us that connecting with these beautiful states inside, finding the way back home, you could say, all of a sudden brings life back together. It feels more whole, more complete. Those beautiful qualities are back in our toolbox, you can say. We're no longer this one-side emotional thing of just being trapped in this miserable world, in the frustrations, in the disappointments, in all the things which are very, very prevalent in today's society. Once you access those more beautiful qualities, because you can find them very easily, all of a sudden you have more choices, you have more insights, you have a much bigger perspective. You don't have to be trapped in these miserable, self-destructive ways, which unfortunately many of us are so used to, we haven't even realized that we're stuck in them. And this is the thing. The more and more we practice, the more and more we in many ways it is a choice, but ultimately you realize that by perspective, the choice is really a bit on the trivial side. Eventually it just makes no sense whatsoever to buy into the negativity, the harmfulness, the self-destruction, the white-anting of ourselves. Now, I'm not entirely sure if white-anting is in the international world. A white ant is a little termite in Australia. It's about the size of a little black sugar ant, which voraciously eat very hard woods. And so to white ant ourselves is basically to destroy ourselves from the inside. And we white ant each other. We eat away at their little good qualities to sabotage and destroy and dismantle all our good qualities. White anting is a very common term in Australian English, so I'm not sure if it's wider. But it's still useful to recognize that we do this. We sabotage ourselves. We disconnect ourselves from our own happiness, from our own beautiful qualities. And because of that, we're miserable. And then we take it out on ourselves or on other people or all of the above. We become basically projecting our own suffering outside, when realistically inside we've already got the solution. We've already had the key in our pocket to open that door. And so for that in particular, it really, really comes back down to not even trying, you do have to try initially, everybody has to try initially, but more sort of seeing that those good qualities were always there, and you cannot actually lose them. And this is something that I deal with quite a lot in the monastery. Very often I have to counsel people who've been very, very traumatized, who've had all kinds of terrible regrets. They feel that there's no point, they're giving up the will to live, they're giving up the will to stay, all kinds of things. Very, very challenging situations. And yet showing that even though the most terrible things have happened to us, we still have those beautiful qualities. They're not destroyed by those suffering, by those, injustices, by all those things which destroy our lives. We always have the ability to forgive. But here's the catch. This is where the vested interests come in. This is where the conflicts of interest come in. Because what happens is our identity has become attached to this trauma, to this suffering, to this injustice, to this unhappiness. And it's become something that we've tried to enclose and that we've, on one hand, trying to resolve, but because it's such an important part of our lives, we can't let it go because it's become who we are. We are the victim, we are the villain. We've been both, many, many times, quite honestly. But the thing is that if we are trapped in that situation where we buy into this situation that we're the good guy or the bad guy or anything in between, that actually prevents us from letting it go because it's become so important to us. It's become our entire world. And that actually disconnects us from the happiness, from the freedom, from those beautiful states. Because there's a priority shift. This is, better the evil we know, basically. So we prefer to stick with that than to be free of it. Because to be free of it means that we're released. To be free of it means what the ego is afraid of is that we will be diminished. And sometimes what the ego is more afraid of is that if we are happy or if we let this injustice go, we're letting the villain, the bad person who did all this stuff to us, that they will be able to get away with it. They'll be, they'll get away scot-free, basically. And it really doesn't work that way. Because as we said before, it's very, very difficult to harm someone else. It's virtually impossible. But we harm ourselves by bringing in that suffering and making it our world. We harm ourselves by listening to other people's projections, which often are misguided because they're angry or upset. Sometimes they're just being nasty. And if we buy into those things, what do they know about us? What do they know about you? That's the reality. Nobody else knows you but you. Nobody else knows your world but you. And that's the thing. It's very empowering to be able to say, we don't have to buy into this stuff. We don't have to choose to be subjected to other people's opinions who have no qualification whatsoever. But that's the thing. That's where that vested interest bounces back, which complicates things. Because all of a sudden, if we see we have that choice, it means we have a responsibility. Basically, we can't be doormats anymore. We can't be trapped, to follow the stream of the advertising and all the stuff that goes on, all the politics and blah, 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 all the stuff that goes on that controls our life or attempts to control us. If you choose all of a sudden not to buy into those things, the ego is going to be a bit afraid of that. It's going to say, well, what else have I got? It's now a bit empty. It's a bit hollow. And that's where we balance it back in because, funnily enough, by bringing in those good qualities again, the happiness, the joy, the loving kindness, the compassion, the contentment, the forgiveness, all these things, all of a sudden it's not an issue anymore. Because that wholeness, so to speak, is back with us. Our ability to be happy in spite of all the difficulties is still there. And we choose to do that because it is far more rational as a way to live. It's far more compassionate way to live. It's far more beneficial and practical way to live. It gives you far more options on how you can navigate life and to make something beautiful out of it. See, this is the problem. When people are suffering so badly, what they try to do is destroy the happiness and the beauty outside because it's confronting, it's painful. We see somebody else that's happy, we don't want it. We want them to suffer as well. I'm having a miserable life, how dare they be happy? And such a foolish way of doing it. And we see the beauty in nature, and that confronts us in exactly the same way. So we must burn it all to the ground and get rid of it. So we're no longer having to be faced with the fact that we're suffering inside. This escapism from our own internal suffering is destroying the outside world. And it's destroying the people we love. And that's a very, very big one to look at, because it's unnecessary. We don't have to do it. We're trying to deal with this unhappiness, and what we're doing, because we don't know better, instinctively we're projecting it out. We're trying to do all kinds of things to deal with it, whether it might even just be shopping or spending time on the internet or surfing your latest songs or whatever. All these distractions, all these ways. How much of our time is spent trying to get away from ourselves? I mean, that's really a big question. How much of our time are we trying to escape from ourselves? We could also ask it the other way. How much of, how many people is their worst nightmare to be in a room with no one but themselves and their own mind? You might be surprised, a lot of people are terrified of being alone with their own mind. And that's a tragedy. That's what we've come to. We've basically let ourselves become so buried in our own unhappiness that we've lost the ability to have joy and happiness and compassion and forgiveness and all these other beautiful things. Appreciating the joy, appreciating the beauty of nature, celebrating other people's happiness and success. Because there's so little happiness in this world. When we see somebody that we love who's happy, how wonderful that is. The potential for joy is everywhere. And yet, we choose not to have it. I remember many, many years ago, this is before I became a monk, probably 16, 17 years ago, something like that. I was talking to a Burmese monk, and I was in a pretty miserable state at that time. And I asked him, why do we do it? Why do we make ourselves so miserable? Why do we buy into all this stuff, all this greed, hatred? Why are we destroying ourselves? And he looked at me as if I was an idiot. Fair enough. And he said, because we want to. Now that one's a very, very interesting one, because I've been telling people that story for many, many years now. And what's interesting as an experiment is to watch what happens in your own mind when we say this. We suffer, we are miserable because we want to. If we watch our own mind, the vast majority of people, you can see it in their eyes, quite honestly, they'll either glaze over and sort of say, yeah, I don't get that. That doesn't make sense to me. Or they resist it. Part of it's going, no, that can't be right. Because all of a sudden it puts everything back on our own plate. But basically, why do we suffer? In other words, first noble truth stuff. Because we want to. Second noble truth. It's a real big one. We choose to make our lives hell. We choose to make our lives miserable. We buy into politics. We buy into all little games, all the power trips, the dominance games, all trying to get and have and to be and whatever. For what? Ultimately, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a little passing fad in many ways, and it doesn't give us the happiness that we really want. The vast majority of the time, that happiness was already there. And we have so many opportunities to find that happiness. It was already there. I think many people don't really want to be happy in many ways. And it's because, you feel more alive when you're in an unpleasant state. That's the unfortunate thing. Many of us, we want to feel more alive generally. That's why people like to have spicy food and loud music and go on roller coaster rides and skydiving and bungee jumping and all these high intense experiences to make us feel more alive, because the ordinariness is so unpleasant. We feel irrelevant. We disappear in the ordinariness. It's frightening to many people. And yet, when you have that happiness inside, that contentment, that joy, all those beautiful qualities, there's no reason to do those. It's not going to give you anything. Yeah, you have some spicy food. Yeah, it's nice, but, a couple hours later, it's another mealtime. It's never going to give you that happiness. It's never going to give you the satisfaction, the completeness, the wholeness, all those words that we bounce around. It's never going to give you it. It always comes back down to that. How we choose to live ultimately is based on what our priorities are, what our vested interests are. Do we really want to be happy? Do we really want to be free? Do we want to live a life filled with beauty and happiness? Do we want to live our lives filled with making good decisions, making pragmatic decisions, decisions that are going to improve our lives, to help our families, our loved ones, the society as a whole, to do good in the world, so to speak? Not for the sake of owning it, not for the sake of being a little do-gooder or a good little Buddhist saint or whatever, but for the beauty of it. Because why not? Why waste life? Life is short enough. Because when we consider it this way, none of us are getting any younger. How, the famous saying in Buddhism, the days and nights are relentlessly passing. How well am I spending my time? What are we doing with our time? It's really a choice on that one. We've never lost the ability or the capacity to make our lives beautiful and to have a beautiful life. And the half an hour is virtually up. Shall we go on to the meditation? Okay, well, assuming that we are, as usual, everybody please stand up, give yourself a bit of a stretch, adjust your clothes and do all the things, adjust your cushion if you need to, and do all the things you need to do. It's always important when you start your meditation to loosen yourself up a bit, because we've already been sitting for half an hour. We don't want to bring this stiff, enclosed into a meditation. It's good to freshen up a little. And when you're ready, you can settle in and close your eyes. And of course, the theme for the meditation tonight will be reconnecting with these beautiful qualities, rediscovering them. And so what we're going to do is relax, is settle in, is to give ourselves the gift of a little bit of happiness, of a little bit of rest. A time that we can forget about all the troubles, about all the stuff that's happening outside, forget about the past and the future and all that stuff, that we can just be here. That we can build that beautiful relationship with ourselves. It doesn't matter how you do it. Whether you settle in feeling your body, or watching your breath, or using a mantra or anything that you use. It really doesn't matter. All we have to do is connect. Connect to that sense of relaxing, that sense of ease, that sense of relief. And to bring in a little bit of joy. The joy of doing something beautiful. Connect deeper by being aware of the feedback your body and mind is giving you. Perhaps your body is saying, just adjust this or just relax this. Be more engaged with that to settle in. And connect more with the part of your mind, the part that wants to let go, that wants to relax. And as we settle in more, whatever positive feeling or emotion you have, whether it's joy, loving kindness, compassion, contentment, it doesn't matter which one it is, just a feeling of peace even. Spend time with that. Become familiar with that. us give us some fuel for these beautiful qualities, to share them, to let them expand, to give them purpose and a place in our lives. Whichever beautiful quality you developed, share it with those you love, and imagine spreading it. It doesn't matter if you have a name or a face, or whether you just spread it like air. We'll spend the next few minutes sharing this quality with the world. And as we do this, see how it reacts, what messages it sends us. Try to connect with the part that wants to expand, that wants to share the joy. To share the delight. And as we bring the meditation to a close, remember this relationship. Remember this beautiful friend that's always in our hearts. And so that we can connect with these beautiful states at any time. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And welcome back. Give yourself a bit of a stretch. Loosen up a bit. Hopefully you won't tie it at all. But okay. Any questions? Bring them on.
Thank you, Ajahn. I have a question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
You just mentioned something, I think I kind of know what you mean, but it would be good if you could explain it a bit more, that you said that deep down we can harm ourselves, but we can harm other people physically, but not psychologically. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. Part of this is to do with anatta, but also that the connection that we have to other people in many ways is not the kind that we think it is. So we can harm ourselves, but it's very, very difficult to harm someone else. If we send all this hatred and violence and horrible words to other people, they can bring it in, so they can bring that into their own lives. But it's not a direct connection. If somebody, there's quite a number of sort of classic stories about this. One that Ajahn uses is that someone walks through a market and bumps into this guy who's all of a sudden insulting him and saying all these horrible things about it. And this guy gets all upset and goes home, and he says to his wife, says, "Why are you so upset?" And he said, "This guy in the market," he said, "Da-da-da-da." And she said, "Don't worry about him, he's crazy, he does this to everybody." And then all of a sudden it's, oh. And you can realize that it was something that he was bringing in. So we harm ourselves really by doing wrong to other people. But that it's really something that spends a while to look quite deeply into. But it's a very, very interesting discovery, you could say, is that we can't really harm others, but we can harm ourselves. And that these asavas, as they're called, this reaching out and pulling in, if you really, really study what's going on there, if you really, really watch, the mind is choosing to reach out to these poisonous words that we hear, or these horrible images that we see. We're choosing to reach out to them, and we're choosing to bring them in, and we're choosing to hold on to them. There's an intention every step of the way. So in this one in particular, the moment you start seeing that pattern happening, you can actually choose, we don't have to connect to this at all. We don't have to bring this poisonous stuff into our lives. But it's very hard to put into words sort of how we believe that we can affect somebody else. It's actually quite an illusion, but this is more deeper stuff that takes a while to investigate, but it is worth investigating. So unfortunately, I don't have a perfect answer for this one. Okay, Sky, go for it.
Yeah, that reminds me of a little bit of about 10 years ago, a girlfriend of mine, I was in a class, it was a ballet class, and I was being very human and going, "Oh, Stephanie, so-and-so said something about me," or blah, blah, blah. I don't remember what I said. And this girl, who's still my friend, she says, "Sky, when are you going to get it?" I said, "What do you mean?" She says, "What other people think about you is none of your business." I don't know, somehow that liberated me, because we can take it home, what we think and all these negative things. I think humans are just prone to make it worse, or not every human, of course, but like the story of the lady who puts on a beautiful dress. She goes to the gala. Her husband likes the dress. Everybody loves the dress. At the way home, one lady says, "Oh, that dress makes you look fat." One person out of 100. She never wears the dress again. There's a screw loose. And I wrote something in the comments too, something about how we feel at times that we're either the prey or the predator. You know, because we are animals first and foremost, you know, I think, but we have this great consciousness. And the only time we're really, really happy is when we're young, maybe, if you're lucky, and have a lovely childhood and have some childish memories without the pressure of life, where you have pure happiness. Maybe that's why Jesus says something like, be like a child, you know? Look for that simplicity. Choose, like you said, Ajahn Sampa, choose the happiness. I mean, I think there's a bumper sticker for that. Anyway, that's just my comments.
No, but it's a very good one.
Oh, one more thing. I started crying during a meditation, and I had to stop because for some reason I was thinking about my mother. She was always wanting, when I was around, when she had me around, she was always wanting to make sure she kissed me hello, kissed me goodbye, kissed me good night, kissed me good morning. And I wrote to her every week in my adult life, and every month, and I called her every week. But she gave me the sense of impermanence and that, you know, kiss me now because I may not be here later. Love me now because you may not be here later. So those were my thoughts during your talk, and your meditation was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. The thing that's interesting about this is because of anatta and anicca and dukkha and everything else, we're constantly trying to build up our identity, firstly to determine who we are, but also as a way to navigate the life, to navigate the world and all the chaos and all the stuff that's in it. And the building blocks of choice are the biggest, most solid ones we can get our hands on. And they tend to be some of the worst ones. You know, the suffering, the victimhood, the villainhood, all this kind of, I did this or he did this to me and da-da-da-da-da, all these regrets and everything else are fabulous building blocks for the ego. But all they do is they build a prison. And a lot of the time, unfortunately, we're geared to choosing these prison blocks because we don't have that connection with the happiness, the joy, the freedom that was always there. So it's kind of, this is the ignorance of Buddhism, so to speak. That's the central problem. Because we haven't realized what happiness is, we choose the worst possible outcome to build our life around. And unfortunately, you know, look what happens when when people who have these poisonous building blocks get into positions of power. It's pretty much self-evident. Yeah. Okay, any more questions?
Martha, would you like to unmute yourself?
Hi, this is Martha.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful for these conversations, and I totally get it. This notion that we can't really hurt anybody else, but that's only after adulthood when I'm allowed to make a conscious choice and capable of that. And also, too, to tell you the truth, good medication in psychotherapy and meditation groups. But I am, because as children, I don't think we have, I know we don't, I study these things because I was interested in them and wanted to reduce suffering in this lifetime for families and children. And that people who are so young, they're not able to make a conscious decision, are not able, I don't think, to choose happiness and choose life, if you will. But I do have a question, though. I totally get from a deep standpoint. I can either make this situation better or worse. I can make my heinous situation even more heinous, or I can choose to kind of live with it. But I do sometimes think some of these things are written from a male perspective. Most of the big books in spirituality are written from a male perspective, and let me just take it down to like a sexual thing. Most of the time, men are the aggressors in sexual situations, and if you know what it's like to be raped, it's y'all have a little bit more power than we do. I don't know. I think when men get raped, it's because somebody's misusing a hold on them also. It's not as easy for a woman to rape a man, but it puts a different perspective on things. And I say that only because we can't really hurt others. But if you think about Precious in that movie, this woman was getting raped by her stepfather, and it was painful. Anyway, that's not really what I wanted to say. I'm sorry that I went off on that, and I'm a little bit distracted because I'm stressed out right now, and it is because of this. I'm looking at this book over here, What the Buddha Taught. This was the first one, the Shakyamuni, I believe it was, from the first Buddha, which was Indian Buddha, where it originated in India, and it's talking about the original teachings of the Buddha, and it talks about how, and this is from I don't even know how to pronounce it, and I haven't had any training in this, and that's why I'm interested to see if y'all have. It's the Kakavati Sihanada Sutta of the Digha Nikaya number 26, and it talks about how Buddha did not take life out of the context of social and economic background, and that leading to happiness is not possible without leading a pure life based on moral and spiritual principles. But the Buddha, according to this book, taught that in order to do that, you have to have favorable financial and social emotional conditions, that it's very difficult to lead a life of happiness, which requires good moral behavior, if you don't have financial and social emotional supports. And what does it say in here? So anyway, point is, it recognizes the need of certain minimum financial and social emotional conditions in order to have spiritual success. And without that, for example, we have things like poverty, and it says right here, poverty is the cause of immorality and crimes, such as theft, falsehood, violence, hatred, and cruelty, and that in ancient times, like in governments today, we try to suppress crime through punishment, but that if we were really wanting to eradicate crime, the economic condition of the people should be improved. We should provide capital for those in business, but also adequate wages to those who are employed. And when people are thus provided for, they will be more contented, have less fear and anxiety, and therefore be more capable of living a more and ethically, behaviorally based life. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, because to me, what that says is we can't really hurt anybody else, but yet people who do cause poverty are causing not just poverty, but also crime on everyone else. I don't know if you have thoughts about that. Thank you very much. I very much appreciate these teachings and the camaraderie. I'm very lonely without it. This is Martha Downell.
Hi. It's a tricky one on this one, because firstly, yes, the conditions are very, very important. You know, if we're starving, if we're terrified, if we're fighting for where the next meal's going to come from, that can put us in very, very terrible places. And so the conditions are very, very important. But there's a little bit of it that says, in spite of the difficulties that we face, we still have to discover the roots inside ourselves for inner strength. Because there's some things in life we just cannot change. Some things in life we cannot snap our fingers and make everything all be all right. So a lot of the time it is working with the conditions that we have, even when they are so horrible, and to, in many ways, to learn from them. Because by understanding our conditions, understanding the pain we're in, the social conditions, if we can help ourselves in that sense, we can help others. Because if we are drowning in our own problems, we will never be free, and we will never be able to help others as well. And that's really, it's a big, hard one, because in many, many ways, it can kind of sound that, oh, I need certain conditions before I can practice. And in many ways, we're actually disenfranchising ourselves even further by sort of saying, oh, only when I have X, Y, Z, I'll be able to let go. But deep, deep down, we come to a point that we realize that this is kind of a rational and compassionate position, that we really have no choice but to let go, but to improve our life, because the alternative is a lose-lose situation, that it is irrational to keep harming ourselves and harming each other. But that requires a great deal of, firstly, inner strength, but also maturity as a person, to recognize our humanity. And the problem basically is when we're in a very, very difficult position, starving, lonely, lost, homeless, etc., 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 it is a lot harder to do that because the instincts overrule. The priorities kick in for us to, the survival instinct takes over, the fight or flight response takes over. And a lot of the time it's being mindful to develop that relationship with ourselves, the compassion for ourselves, say, yes, this is a situation we are in, but what can we do with this? So it's a very, very big conversation, that one. And thank you for bringing it up. But we could be talking all night about this one. Yeah. So, Simran, would you like to?
Yeah,
I
agree with you. There's a line in this, one of my favorite shows, Dope Thief, and he talked about being impoverished with family because he wasn't able to, or allowed to make a livable wage because he was, whatever conditions, he had to do manual labor on behalf of others. This has been happening since time immemorial. He said without that livable wage, he had to make a choice between his life, as in, I'm going to die if I keep doing this manual labor in the hot weather with unsafe conditions. I have to choose between my life or my soul, because he's going to have to engage in some sort of criminal behavior in order to make a livable wage. So, anywho, thank you for this. Thank you.
Yeah.
I agree. I can't believe I haven't turned to life of crime, but to tell you the truth.
Okay, Simran.
Thank you, John. My question is about the topic of choices and how it's like we choose to suffer, because I definitely agree with that. And I feel that I've definitely seen that to the point where I don't really enjoy choices. I honestly have gone so deep into that, focusing on it in the past year, that I prefer when choices are made for me. And if somebody just tells me what to do versus me having all these choices, because I know what choices lead to and the craving it causes versus just being told. And sometimes there is that resistance because my mind goes, oh, would I want that? And I was, no, you don't. That wanting is so painful. Just whatever you get, just accept it. And that has been quite freeing. But that is an example of something I've only seen after probably all the pain of the choices. And similarly, with trying to deal with physical pain, for example, I was trying to shut out this because I have a medical condition, like extreme like physical pain that caused me to like yell out. It's really painful, and I would just shut it out by numbing the mind, watching stupid YouTube videos, what they might call doom scrolling, for example. And then it's not until it was just causing pain to my eyes and just causing me to what they call bed rot, then I've been so turned away from it, where now, even though I lie in pain, I'm like, accept the pain, because what you accept, eventually dissolves. What you reject, that's what persists. And understanding, like, look within and see that suffering. But again, this is the second time where it's not till you sort of have this really bad experience that turns you away from something that you can sort of, that for at least in my experience, that I'm able to stick with that right view kind of thing. And so my question is about, even being disgusted by the body and seeing that it's not sexually attractive, all these sort of practices, and I'm talking especially even what's in the suttas. I wonder if there is a way to develop a right view in terms of worldly things in a manner that doesn't require to sort of go to such extremes of pain. I mean, like, even in meditation retreats, you'll see people like crying and getting it out, and then finally they see it. It's sort of like you need to go to this deep, painful state to be put off these sorts of worldly things. But I wonder if there's another way.
It's different for each person, actually. Sometimes what we need is the proverbial kick up the behind. And these deep states of pain basically are getting us to that point where we have no choice but to let go. Where we have no choice but to accept the way things are. The problem basically is that there certainly is plenty of other ways. It's not necessary to go through all this pain. The problem is that the mind has vested interest. It's not going to let go until it's really pounded into it. And unfortunately, that's more of a character thing rather than a practice thing. So a lot of this is more, and for sure, I've met plenty of people who have told me straight that they look for the pain intentionally. They make themselves suffer because they believe that is the only way to, experience some freedom. But when you really look closely, what they're doing there, unfortunately, is that they're entrapping themselves in that pain so that their mind has no choice. But what it does is it raises the threshold of pain tolerance, and then you need to go further and further and further. It becomes almost like a drug addiction pattern. So the thing is that it doesn't matter at all which pathway you choose. One of the ways I often describe this is that if I give you a tray of water to make ice, it doesn't matter if you put it in your kitchen freezer. It doesn't matter if it's freezing outside and you put it outside overnight. It doesn't matter if you build yourself a rocket to the dark side of the moon and freeze it there. Any of these ways work to make ice because it's a cause and effect. So in many of these situations, pain is not necessary, but it can be very, very attractive to the ego because it's such an intense experience. And unfortunately, the entrapment arises in this belief that by forcing the mind, by punishing the body, by forcing it to submit to my will, is very, very engaging. It's a huge power trip. And the fact that it never works, forces us to try harder. It almost like, here's the enemy, it grows bigger and bigger. It's a bigger trip. Unfortunately, that's why the ascetic extreme just does not work. But it's an incredibly addictive one. So the difficulty is more sort of a matter of inner strength, is that a lot of the time we're trying to get away from the ordinariness. We're trying to get away from the everyday mehness or the unpleasantness and all the doom scrolling and all the information where we just want to crawl into a hole and just bed rot, as you said, which is I think the word of the time. So the difficulty is that we're still trying to do this as a way to escape. And we're trying to escape because we haven't got those beautiful qualities inside, because they give us so much strength. The compassion, the joy, the contentment, the forgiveness, all these things, they don't require us to punish ourselves or to be in these terrible, terrible situations. And sometimes, yes, they thrive in seeing the suffering, because compassion arises very easily when we can recognize, yes, we are in pain, and our loved ones are in pain and unhappy and are struggling and everything else. The compassion can arise very, very easily, very effortlessly. but it's more a matter of, are we open to that? And that's kind of a bigger question. Are we really open to that yet? And so it's a lot of the time is to build that kind of maturity. So hope that helps. But again, this is a very big conversation. So is this more in the direction that you were thinking?
Yes, Ajahn, thank you. It's beneficial to know that there are other methods, and yes, it probably has been playing into it as a character thing, but definitely something I'm going to explore is other methods.
Yeah, because there's so much joy to be had, so much beauty to discover, and that we don't need to suffer at all. That's the real big thing. So I wish you all the best on that. Okay. Any more?
I have the last one. Because before the meditation, I actually don't feel like I want to meditate, but your talk inspired me, so I sit down and meditate anyway. So thank you so much. And because your talk about like your experience dealing with like individuals with traumatic experience. And I personally have thought about this thing for quite a long time. Like, what does that mean? Like, what does it mean by letting go of trauma? And I think I find my answer in my meditation just now. And I think it's like, for me, it's like letting go of trauma is like, because I have a feeling like I wish they didn't happen. Like, I wish those things didn't happen. I wish those people were different. I wish my life was different. I have this kind of feeling underlying everything. But I think I have increasingly, like, able to look at things in terms of cause and condition. Because I read about Ajahn Jayasaro's article the other day, and then he said that a lot of the time we think that those people's behaviors are offensive because we have the feeling like it shouldn't be like this. But if they get that kind of condition, cause and condition, and if they behave in such a way, why not? Like, why not? Their behavior is normal, like in their cause and condition is normal. And I was like, I think it's just during a meditation, I have this feeling like, if those terrible things happen, like, why not? I mean, like, if the cause and conditions are there, it's like they're part of, like, they're not part of, I don't know how to say, but it's not like they're part of me. They're not increasingly not become important to me anymore, but I recognize them as like a part of like the cause and conditions, and they're normal. Like they're not really abnormal. It's like, it's not like they shouldn't happen, but they happen and it is normal. I don't know how to say that, but I want to say thank you for your talk and thank you for your meditation. I think recognizing my goodness and then recognizing my practice on the path helped me a lot as well in this aspect. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's one of the challenges we actually have, because at the beginning we kind of want everything to be happy and nice and pleasant, and it shouldn't be like this, it shouldn't be like that. And when all this unpleasant stuff, it's like, why is this happening? I don't want this. Go away. You know, why are these people like this? And then we discover, yeah, they're exactly like this because of their causes and conditions, because of all the stuff they've been through and how they've, in some ways, been educated, how they can deal with this stuff or not, how they've been unable to deal with this stuff, shapes them who they are. And because they deal with more stuff internally, they launch out sometimes to other people. And we can recognize, actually, that's their story, that's who they are. And it doesn't need to poison us. We can have compassion for them in that situation. You know, maybe we won't be able to help them. There are cases where people are, you know, emotionally insecure, manipulative narcissists. They exist. And they're trapped in a world which is a nightmare for them. and they take it out on other people to try and control and to get and have and cause so much destruction in the meantime. And it's a really, really big world to be getting into to see this is normal. That's a very big world to be getting into. And a lot of people, they kind of don't want to go there because it basically means, we have to accept people as they are, and also that we don't have to buy their story. So it's a big one, isn't it?
I know it's time. I know it's time now, but I just want to share one last thing. It's like because the other day I read Arden Charles' book, and then there is one sentence that said there's no one that do anything to anyone in this world. And then when I was seeing that, I start to ponder that a lot. I still think about it from time to time. I still haven't got the answer, but I think I resonate with the discussion that you guys have earlier.
I'll hope it helped. Thank you for having me.
Is there any more questions or comments?
Actually, I fully agree with what Ajahn said. If we really ponder about it or contemplative on the emotion, the feeling, the memory perception, the mental formation and all that, it's interesting, really very interesting, is that it just come and it just go based on condition.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes can be so funny, sometimes can be so evil, sometimes can be so comical, sometimes can be so sad, sometimes can be so happy. It's interesting and it just come and it just happen because of condition. Even whether we like it or we don't like it, we hate it or whatsoever, it's happened because of condition, and we react to it. Is like what Ajahn said. Actually, technically speaking, if we choose and if we really understand anatta, actually there's no one can hurt us or make us feel if we see it. I don't know how to put it into words, but it's really true. It's just like that day when I asked the question, and the condition is such that it's a bit offensive for me, and that mental formation, that mental volition, it just come back, and the next day it came back again, and the next day it came back again. It's like continuously 3 days, and it happened again and again. I watch it. I just find it so comical. It's like it's already over. It's like 3 days ago. Yes, it made me feel very uncomfortable. It's not agreeable, but so what? But because of condition as such, it happened because we are in the world, in the samsara, with so many different people, so many different type of beings around us. These are just merely experience, and experience can be painful, pleasant, and all kind, and we take it as it is me and mine. But technically speaking, if we look at it and we just observe it, it just come and it just go, and technically speaking, is not self.
Yeah. This interesting thing is, we actually talked about this last time we were together, that one of the biggest happinesses, one of the biggest freedoms, is to just leave the whole thing alone. That we don't have to fix it. It's just stuff coming and going. It really has next to nothing to do with us. It's all causes and conditions. And that is very, very freeing to get ourselves to that point that it doesn't matter what comes into your head, what comes into your life. They're just thoughts, they're just feelings. They come, they go. They're just experiences, they come, they go. Our perception of them is conditioned, and we can change our perception, but ultimately it doesn't matter what pops into our head. It doesn't matter at all, because it is all anatta. The problem is because we grab hold of it, because we we project what we expect it to be, what we believe it should be, and because of our own pain we hold on to, and then we take it outside or harm ourselves even further. It's a really fascinating world to be into, and this is the big adventure, really. This is sort of the stuff to be really interested in, because you can see how subtly all this is, how we are triggered by tiny little things that we grab onto, and yet we never needed to grab onto anything at all. Because when we found those beautiful qualities that were already there, when we restore that beautiful relationship to ourselves, all of a sudden we don't need this stuff. We don't need to grab onto this stuff to fill that hole, because it was never a problem in the first place. In many ways, it's, as you said, sometimes it's really comical, but also sometimes it's a real tragedy that we buy into some really crazy ideas and do such terrible things with them. So, thank you for bringing that up.
I think we have come to the end of the group. Would you be happy to leave us with a blessing?
Okay. So, may you all find that good relationship with yourselves, so that you found what you're looking for. Thank you. And thank you for having me.